Welcome to my virtual VSS talk. My name is Mark Lavelle, and today I'll be presenting some analyses that were conducted in the Applied Visual Attention Laboratory at the University of Utah. So the present analyses combined two ERP paradigms that had yet to be combined. The first is the repeated visual search paradigm that has begun to characterize the neural processes responsible for maintaining an active representation of a target template, and how with repetitions the relative contribution of different processes changes. So the decline in the visual working memory or in the CDA amplitude is indicative that visual working memory plays a smaller role in maintaining the target template as participants repeatedly search for the same target. We also use the subsequent memory paradigm, which allows you to characterize the processes during encoding that are predictive of later explicit recognition. And this has allowed us to begin to lay to rest an outstanding mystery in the repeated visual search paradigm, which is, does this apparent migration of the target template out of visual working memory actually predict a long-term encoding of that target? And evidence from the CDA amplitude in the present investigation indicates that the decline in the CDA does not predict whether a participant is going to later remember an image that they repeatedly searched for. However, the N2pc amplitude is predictive of whether a participant is going to later remember a search target. So our paradigm involved two phases. The first was a training phase. The second was an explicit recognition test, which I will describe in a moment. But our training phase was representative of repeated visual search paradigms, and it goes like this. We give participants a lateralized target cue and tell them to attend to a particular color. The color defines their target, so in this case the elephant is their target. And they have to remember their target before searching for it using covert attention. They can't make eye movements during this time. So we record ERPs during this retention interval, so all the ERPs I'll be discussing throughout the talk pertain to this retention interval. So now I'd like to turn to some background that motivated our investigation, some background literature. So these two studies by Servant and colleagues and Drew and colleagues in 2018 largely replicated each other, and I'll turn now to those effects. So as a participant repeatedly searches for the same target, these studies have found that participants get faster at search and they commit fewer errors. Repeated search also seems to reduce the amplitude of the CDA, which indicates that the target template does not rely as much on visual working memory as participants repeatedly search for that same target. So how is it that participants are able to continue searching if they're not using as much visual working memory? It appears that participants are becoming familiar with their targets and they remember what they're looking for, so that the target template might be stored in some automatic long-term format, as indicated by the reduction in FN 400 amplitudes from repetition 1 to the rest of the repetitions. The N2pc shows a similar pattern. After the first repetition, participants know what they're looking for, so from repetition 2 onwards, participants are very successful in orienting their attention to the search target, even though they don't know which side it's going to appear on during that target preview. So all of these results together suggest that the target template is leaving visual working memory and it's going into some form of automatic long-term memory. But no repeat search investigation to this point has tested how well participants are actually remembering their search targets. So that was our goal. And the way that we did that was we used an explicit recognition test where participants had to click on an image in a search array that they had seen before. So there was only one target present on every trial, and there was always a target present. There were 198 trials like this, corresponding to the 198 unique targets that participants searched for during training. Some of the time participants remembered what they were looking for, and some of the times they did not, and they clicked on the wrong image. By explicitly testing memory in this way, what we're able to do is go back and separate the training trials that were predictive of later memory and those that were predictive of later forgetting. So because we measured lateralized components, we are able to show you now the first N2pc and CDA waveforms that have been separated according to subsequent memory. So try to contain your excitement. Before we get to that, we have to talk about exactly how many images that participants ended up remembering. So participants were well above chance in their recognition performance for the repeated search targets. Chance would have been around 11% if people were clicking at random, but participants were around 60% recognition. We also backsorted visual search error rates and reaction times according to subsequent memory, and participants ended up searching faster for images that they later remembered, and they committed fewer visual search errors for images that they later remembered. So turning now to the ERPs, based on the repeated search literature, what we would expect is that remembered images would, during the training phase, the CDA amplitude would decline faster for images that people later remember. Or I guess this is not a mutually exclusive pattern, the CDA amplitude could reach a lower overall point for remembered images. But what we found was that the CDA amplitude did not decline faster nor reach a smaller overall point for remembered images. And this suggests that the handoff from visual working memory to some other form of memory does not actually predict a durable form of encoding, which is quite a surprise. To help us make sense of this result, there is some literature, or there are some findings in the repeated search literature that are consistent with what we found. So Reinhardt and colleagues in 2016 found the classic effect of participants' CDAs declining across repeated exposures to a target, and that their reaction times declined across repeated exposures. So they found that classic positive correlation between absolute magnitude of CDA and reaction time, indicating that participants are getting more familiar with their search targets. However, on the fifth repetition, this correlation is flipped if you tell participants that by searching faster, they can earn a larger reward. So it appears that the CDA doesn't have a strict one-to-one correlation with accumulating familiarity with a search target. Turning now to the N2pc results, what you would expect based on the previous repeated search literature is that remembered images would better draw attention than forgotten images if the allocation of attention is a marker of memory. And that is indeed what we found. So across all repetitions, remembered images evoked a bigger N2pc than forgotten images. Taking into account that participants also searched faster for remembered images, this is in line, and this is a replication of previous investigations of training during visual search. So the effects of training in contextual cueing manifest as faster reaction time, and the degree of the benefit from contextual cueing is correlated with the degree of the increase in the N2pc amplitude. We're left to wonder what exactly is the functional significance of this better attentional deployment during training. Is it the case that participants, or is it the case that when participants are better able to orient their attention to a target, that they somehow are encoding more details, and that orienting of attention is supportive of encoding. It could be the case, but at this point, we're not able to definitively say that is what's going on. And in fact, this pattern of results of remembered images drawing bigger N2pc than forgotten images, this pattern is consistent with the stimuli themselves differing in terms of their salience and their ability to be remembered. So, for example, if you compared Ronald McDonald as a search target to this wrestling belt, you might find that it's easier, or that Ronald McDonald supports better attentional orienting, and that Ronald McDonald is also more familiar and easier to remember. But at this point, we're not able to say whether the attention effect on subsequent memory is due to an endogenous factor in participants or whether it's driven by the stimuli themselves. If it is the case that the stimuli are driving the effect, it is quite interesting that the CDA isn't sensitive to the stimulus properties driving the effect. If you'll recall, the remembered images supported faster visual search and more accurate visual search, and as a marker of active maintenance of the contents of visual working memory, you might expect that the CDA would be sensitive to these properties of the images that are supporting better visual search, but we didn't find that. And as a marker of active maintenance of stimuli, you might also expect that the CDA would have been sensitive to the properties of these stimuli that support subsequent recognition, but again, we didn't find that, and it's a mystery that we hope to resolve in future work. So I thank you for watching my talk, and I invite your comments and questions in the chat function on my talks on my talks webpage, and I also invite you to participate in a live chat session that I have scheduled, and the details of that are on the webpage for this talk. I'd like to thank the members of the Applied Visual Attention Laboratory, Kobe Cornelison and the graduate research assistant, Lauren Williams, and our principal investigator, Trafton Drew. And thank you again for watching the talk, and I hope you enjoy your virtual VSS.